issues to be able to be proactive and respond to these kind of allegations. Firstly, when the Deputy President of the Republic is said to have escaped an assassination, it is not a small issue. It requires those that are in his office to be able to go out and clarify the people so that they should be able to calm the citizens. Because if you have this kind of issues, as I said earlier on, they create a situation where ordinary citizens will feel unsafe and also create an impression that things are not right at the highest office of government. And that, in my view, is something that I expected those that are in the communications in the presidency to be able to act swiftly so that they are able to clarify the nation about the exact events that occurred on that day.
The problem, though, Dr. Ndor, is that it raises questions about the credibility not only of the highest office and second most highest office in the land, and that is that of the deputy presidency, but also perhaps, as conjecture would say, some would even say the president's office, because there have been aspersions cast or a doubt sown about the relationship or competition for being at the helm. So there's that one narrative, but there's also a doubt being cast on the credibility of the party itself. Who would benefit from such a false narrative if it is indeed true that the deputy president peddled this information, or his office did, while fully being aware that what happened was an accident?
Maybe to add on what you just asked me would be, why keep quiet when you know that there is false information that is going out there and you have got all the opportunities to be able to clarify such? But we also do know that the deputy president has ambitions to become the president of both the ANC and subsequently government. It could also be used as a strategy to say, now that it is quite possible for me to take over as the leader of the ANC, there could be people that are going out there who would love to engage me so that I don't occupy that position and get someone else to do so. It could also be a strategy to launch the campaign for presidency, because in any way, most people will be talking about this issue and therefore create the relevancy for the deputy president to become the president of the republic. It could also be informed by factions within the party, and an attempt being to say, maybe there is another faction on the other side, and the faction that is within him, and of course the other faction would love to eliminate him because in any way, maybe they would not love him to be in power. So this issue creates a lot of perceptions, which has a potential to create instability in his party, the ANC, and indeed in government.
And this is what I'm wondering, beyond what has been seen or pointed out to be endemic factionalism within the ANC, what are some of the more deeper structural issues within the party that create an environment where such a misrepresentation of facts can occur and even gain traction?
There are a number of issues that the ANC leadership is busy struggling with, and one of those being the decision that was taken by the ANC to be in the government of national unity, and indeed with the party like the Democratic Alliance and the FF+. We do know that there are some within the leadership of the ANC, and there are issues that are raised that says Deputy President Mashatile is not very much happy with the government of national unity. He could have favored other parties to be in the government of national unity. And of course, it will not be surprising that such debates are taking place, because not all the people in the ANC do support the involvement of the Democratic Alliance in the government of national unity. And some do feel that the presence of the Democratic Alliance in the ANC has the potential to further weaken the ANC. And those are the views that are being raised by people like Paul Mashatile, people like Panyaza Lesufi, some in the ACCP, and in this case, the most vocal one being Solima Paila, and many others. So these are some of the issues that has a potential, if not properly managed, to further divide and factionalize the ANC. But of course, the race for leadership in the ANC appears to have started, and this and many other stories are going to develop, because that is how some within the ANC would love to launch the election campaigns.
But surely this also is deeper than that it also seeps into questions around public trust in our democratic institutions. And does that mean that it not only exposes but creates even more fertile ground for further misinformation that could also destabilize South Africa and the body politic in general?
When you rely on misinformation, you actually firstly study your constituency, or you study the ground. And I think what the attempt that they try to make is that, let's take this story to go out to the public and only keep quiet and not give a proper perspective. Because my view is that immediately when it was reported that there is an attempt to assassinate the deputy president, and knowing that such is not correct, I expected that all the media houses should have been informed that what has actually happened is not the truth, and the manner in which is being reported is not actually representative of the facts. That is exactly what I expected from that office. And the unfortunate part is that they decided to keep quiet. And I think the strategy here was to say, let's have this matter moving and see how the other people will respond. And the unfortunate part is that there are some, and indeed many senior leaders of the ANC, who decided to just brush the issue aside. Maybe they could have read the situation, or they could have known that this information could not be correct.
And just a final question, and I'm going to ask two in tandem, in fact. There's the whole question around investor confidence when such issues occur, and when one considers the diplomatic quagmire we find ourselves in with the United States. Could it be possible that there could be an even more sinister campaign, or even hand at play here? Could it be possible that it may not necessarily be Paul Mashatile, or maybe with Paul Mashatile's knowledge, but that there's actually a bigger end game here to actually unseat the president of South Africa as a result of all of this innuendo?
The unfortunate part is that it will be difficult to get the exact motive behind all this. But one thing is for sure, which is that in the ANC, and we've seen that through many other conferences, that the inability of the ANC to manage successions and the manner in which leaders of the ANC beyond conferences would relate and treat each other creates this kind of suspicions, and indeed it creates a situation where it becomes difficult for the leaders of the same party to trust each other. It is a fact that in the ANC you could still get people who would be plotting the removal of some of their leaders, because there are those who appears not to be having the long hearts to wait until their turn has to come. And the manner in which the ANC leaders differ, they take it too far, to an extent that some will become casualties that could not be able to recover when all things are done.
Dr. Nto, thank you so much for your time and going on this exploratory journey with me. As I said, lots of intrigue and obviously lots of speculation, but it is a very important story coming through. That is one of the publications, News 24, reporting that the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, knew that the so-called attempted assassination was in fact an accidental shooting at his car. Dr. Oliver Nto, political analyst, brings the time to 21 minutes past 9.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Just the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school, and as per usual, her friends don't usually come to my car just to say hellos and goodbyes. So this particular day, they made this comment about my jacket, saying that it's giving baddie vibes. You say my jacket is giving what?
It's giving
Baddie vibes. It got me thinking, where did the baddies come from? Because nothing is new under the sun, as it is said. I was like, oh yes, remember the Kenyan parliamentarian? Her name is Millie Odhiambo.
When you are urging me to be a good example to the girls, the younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad girl like me.
And I thought to myself, that is the original Betty.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Hawa wa Afrika Kusini wenye asili ya kizungu ambao wamepewa ukimbizi huko nchini Marekani. Je, nini chanzo cha wao kuomba ukimbizi nchini Marekani?
Wenyewe hawajaomba ukimbizi. Kuna shirika fulani inaitwa AfriForum, shirika mbili za wazungu ambao wanatetea haki ya wazungu hapa, AfriForum na Solidarity. Hao walienda Marekani kufanya kampeni kusema kwamba wazungu wananyanyaswa hapa Afrika Kusini, na walizofanya hiyo kampeni serikali iweze kuwafuatilia kujua nini ambacho mnasema kwamba mnanyanyaswa.
Kuna namna ya wao kwamba wamepoteza uraia wa Afrika Kusini, na je, endapo Trump akamaliza muda wake madarakani, uhalali wao wa kuishi nchini Marekani ukoje?
Itakuwa vigumu, kifupi itakuwa vigumu wenyewe kupoteza uraia wao.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Channel Africa, born to tell Africa's incredible stories.
Sigo la bueno la Africa.
A nossa história contada por nós. Happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to you.
Listen on SABC Plus, DSTV Audio Bouquet 802, and Satellite Channel PAS 10. At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Sipiso Magweta.
Channel Africa.
And at 24 minutes past 9, we continue with some of the political developments, not only in South Africa, the continent and beyond, but we come back to South Africa. So here on Africa World Hour today, we are joined by Ambassador Edward Boateng, Ghanaian diplomat, media leader, and observer of Africa's political and social landscape. Now, in his thought-provoking essay recently, The Tale of Two Cities, A Mirror to Black African Governance, he contrasts Cape Town and Johannesburg to explore deeper questions about leadership, accountability, and the future of our cities. Are we building or just surviving? Are we governing or just holding office? He asks. Ambassador Boateng joins us now to unpack these critical issues. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Ambassador?
Thank you. Yes, Sipiso, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Great. We have you on the line. So, Ambassador, when I came across this article, I know it was several weeks ago, and we'd hoped to speak to you then, but because we couldn't quite marry our diaries, I still thought it was a very important conversation to have, though. I'm just curious as to what made you write it, and what was the thought process behind what it is that you were hoping to achieve with it.
All right, thank you very much, Ifiso, and I would like to also thank you, your listeners, for tuning in to listen, and for me to share my thoughts. I also like to thank your producer, Pomodo, who put this together. I was touched by what I saw on my last trip to South Africa, because for me, I was a young person in the early 90s when South Africa attained its independence, and South Africa embodied the aspirations not only of South Africans but the entire black race, Africa, and also the United States, blacks in the US and elsewhere. And I've always been very, very positive about what South Africa can achieve, because I believe that South Africa's success will not only be for South Africans or black South Africans, but the entire black race, in the sense that my philosophy is that when the tide comes ashore, whether it's a small tide or a big one, it takes all the boats up or jacks the boats in a particular way. So I've always had that hope that for Africa to move ahead the way our forefathers thought of it, we need to have some pillars of success. And I've always seen South Africa as one of the pillars of success of Africa. So as a young corporate person, when I was working in the US, I didn't hesitate to move to South Africa when the opportunity came, especially when the late President Mandela extended invitation that those of us with the skills should move down and help. I mean, I was very much part of the South African democratic process from 1992 to 1998. I was also part of some of the institutions that came up in South Africa, especially in the media, SABC, ETV, for those who know me. And I always felt very strongly that we should change the African narrative around poverty, around inefficiency, around our inability to manage institutions. So I left South Africa to come back to my country with the same dream, that we have to do it and we can do it better. So on this trip, and I've been in South Africa in 10 years, when I got to Cape Town, I must admit that Cape Town was not my most favorite place when I was living in South Africa. And I lived in South Africa I started coming to South Africa from around 1991 all the way through to 98 when I left. So the order, and it sort of struck me that, oh wow. Then I went into town and I saw the fact that colors, blacks, what I used to experience before was not there. We had an event in Stellenbosch, and I must say I was taken aback by even wine farms being turned into gated communities. And I went into some of these just to see for myself whether it was still a segregated society, and I was quite impressed. I mean, I saw there were problems because I went into some of the townships. I saw there were still the challenges. Cape Town is still, I think, the fourth city in the world, the highest in terms of homicide rates. But when I came to Johannesburg, and my last trip to Johannesburg was around 2015, but I'd been there in 2010 for the World Cup. What struck me was the airport. I realized that obviously airport was built in 2010, 15 years later. You'd think that, okay, in terms of sanitation, in terms of the cleanliness, it would have gone down, but not at the rate at which I saw. I mean, I was a bit disappointed
I want to jump
with the
into that,
jaded
Ambassador.
tiles, and in some places the cracked or broken tiles.
I want to jump
Then
into that. You
on the
say the
highway to
deterioration.
Sandton, I was on my phone, but what I saw was my driver swerved. So I lifted and I said, why? He said, I was trying to dodge a pothole. I said, pothole on the N1. He said, yes. Then we saw another one. I said, oh, wow, I never expected to see this. So for me, it was a metaphor of Africa at that time that, South Africa are going the same way as all of us. Then I was staying in Hyde Park. And that really hit me really hard because Hyde Park, arguably, is one of the wealthiest suburbs, not only in South Africa, but the entire African continent, the entire Black African continent. If you talk about suburbs with high property in terms of pricing. And I saw the homes of various important people, I don't want to mention names, as the driver pointed them out to me. And I saw the potholes and I was like, wow. Then in the evening where I was staying, the lights went off. And my caretaker said to me that, we'll get the lights back on at 6. I wasn't prepared for that. I'd heard it, but I hadn't prepared myself. So that evening, as I sat in the darkness of my living room, I said to myself that, why can't we get it correct? So,
Ambassador, allow me then to jump in at this point and say,
South Africa, but it's about us, the people.
Ambassador, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Why can't we just manage and get things moving the way it should be? So that was the motivation that I thought I needed to share my thoughts.
So let's talk about that. And I'm not sure if you are able to hear me, Ambassador, because I've been trying to interject on a number of occasions because I wanted to get to the point. Yes, Ambassador, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard what I was saying.
I did. I heard a lot of it, Ambassador. There are several points that I tried to interject on because I want to get to the point of because when you talk about Johannesburg and you talk about Cape Town, already a lot of racial considerations come into play. And you, at some point to the fact that it's about removing identity, decoupling identity politics to performance politics. And for people who would ask, is it a matter of the face of those who are in government, or is it a matter of the professional skills that are available? What is the difference then between Cape Town and Johannesburg and the management thereof?
I didn't put it down to race, but I would put it down to diligence and efficiency, maybe capacity and capability. Because I first went to China in 1992. I was a young executive for my company. And I must be honest with you, in 1992, Beijing was nowhere near Sandton in South Africa, or most of the South African cities. Then I went back a few years later as ambassador, and I was surprised at the level of the malls, the cleanliness of the cities, cleanliness of the suburbs. So I asked myself that if they can do it in China, why can't we do it in Africa? And when I compare Cape Town and Johannesburg, it's about us. It's about our inability to set higher standards for ourselves. It's an inability to punish wrongdoers because they come from our tribe, they come from our political party, or they come from our family. And I think having worked in various environments, especially in the West, in the East, and in Africa, we have a big problem when it comes to holding our own people accountable. And therefore, we give people a lot of responsibility without any accountability. And I think that's what is happening to Johannesburg. I did not believe in 1994 that a time would come when the ANC would do a deal with the National Party, which is now the DA. I never thought it would happen. But my white friends used to tell me that one day you guys would come begging us to come and manage. But I never thought it would happen. I mean, I watched the president speak to President Trump and calling the agric minister, who is white, to defend us. I mean, I was watching it and all these things baffle me. But I believe that South Africa has the best technology in Africa, the best institutions, the best educational institutions, and they should succeed. Black management in South Africa should succeed so that they can serve as an example to those of us up north. If they fail, we all continue to fail. because we need to have pillars of success that we can all look to. We need to have role model countries that we can all see. After all, in Asia, it was Japan that came up, followed by Singapore. South Korea came, and now it's China. And now it's not even China. You go to Vietnam, you go to Indonesia, you go to Bangladesh, and they are all pulling each other up. Where are our success stories in Africa if the best of the best continue to fall?
What do you think it is, Ambassador? Because as you were speaking, I recall just a few years post-independence, some of my colleagues from the continent said, we give your country 20 years to fall into the pitfalls of what they see as, commensurate with African governance systems. And if we're talking about nepotism, mediocrity, corruption here, what is it that keeps that being the picture of African governance on the continent? You speak about measures to hold people to account, but it seems that, we are stuck on making sure that we pay homage to those who got us into governments rather than concentrating on service delivery.
Well, so I have had the opportunity to travel to over 47 of the 54 African countries, and I've visited probably over 300 of our cities and towns across the continent over the last 30 years. I can say with deep conviction that we cannot solve our problems by continuing to blame external forces. Today we have the narratives which is being created by the new president of Burkina Faso, a lot of these AI-issued narratives which reflect, for me, a distorted abstraction. It's not our reality. I believe that our inability to perform is also obscured by our continuous appeals to racism and external discrimination. When I was in China, then I realized that these people have also been colonized. Most of their cities, Guangzhou, that we all flock to, Hong Kong, Qingdao, were all under one time German, British, or Japanese domination. Japanese almost killed 30 million Chinese people at one point. However, why have they been able to lift themselves up? Because they don't allow the past to define them. We continue to use discrimination and racism for our inefficiency, and I think that should stop. And South Africa is a very good example. That should stop. I think we should hold our people accountable. If they are not performing, we should. We should move away from tribal politics and move away from family politics and move away from continuously blaming external factors. Because I believe that we have what it takes on the continent in terms of human capacity, in terms of resources. We are the most endowed continent. But why can't we do what is right? It's because we're always blaming external factors. And it's time that we begin to take responsibility for ourselves. And when we start taking that responsibility, we can hold our own accountable. Even in our own countries, if you come to my country, Ghana, some of the best managed companies, institutions are all foreign owned. Our own institutions were unable to manage them. Why? We need to start asking ourselves those questions. We have to self-reflect and stop blaming external factors. Yes, we've gone through that pain, but we cannot let that pain continue to define us. And for me, that was really what hit me on this trip. We cannot.
Ambassador, what would it take, though, to change that mentality structurally and culturally? Because as generations pass, we do keep on saying we need to move away from that way of thinking, that we need to do better. But we are seemingly failing to do that. What is the impediment in your view? Why are we failing to be efficient in something that will serve us as a people. When we talk about basic service delivery, it's a no-brainer that it's for our families that we're providing. It's for the next generation that we're providing for. So why is patronage still a problem, for instance?
It's a poverty mentality, Sabiso. It's a poverty mentality to blame external factors. So we as citizens should also hold our leaders accountable. And I think it's time that that's why the leader in Burkina Faso has become so popular. But I think they're also using the wrong approach of blaming external factors. We need to hold our leaders accountable. And I think our leaders, we need a new generation of leaders that will also not personalize success. I think in Africa, we've personalized success. And the weapon of success is me. So if we can build strong institutions, and we keep saying this, as you have said, but I also believe that if we can have role model countries, I've given the example of China, Asia. Japan started after the Second World War, South Korea picked up, Singapore, then China, and now you have Vietnam. I mean, the fastest growing economies, Vietnam, Cambodia. When I was a student in the US, Vietnamese were really looked down upon. But today, look at Vietnam. We have a lot of Africans going to Vietnam to buy products. Why? Why are they not coming to us? You have cashew, you have some of our products that are shipped from West Africa, agro products to Vietnam. That's where they are repackaged and sent to Europe and sent to China and other places. And I ask myself, why can't we do it back home? Vietnam, just 20 years ago, was a country that was broken apart by the war. But they hold themselves accountable. We should stop glorifying inefficiency. And I think we, the citizens, also are to be blamed, all of us. I mean, I don't take myself out. I'm a leader in my country, and I ask myself all the time, what can we do better? Can we stand up to our leaders? We cannot. And I think that's one of our major problems. But I also believe, and I'm coming to that realization painfully, that, capacity and capability are built over time. If you look at Singapore, it wasn't built by Singaporeans. If you look at Dubai that we all go to, it wasn't built by the Emiratis. They brought expertise, they brought capacity from outside. And once they've done it, and they leave the institutions in place, you learn to manage it. Today you have people from UAE, Saudi Arabia, taking out their technology, but the technology that was never built by them. Even China, most of the technology they started with was not built by them, but they have learned. Now they have even better and superior technology to wherever they copied it from. So maybe we should also accept that probably we don't have the capacity and capability to manage some of these institutions and bring people who can do it for us and learn so that we take over. Maybe, having traveled over the last 30 years, I'm coming painfully to that realization that maybe we cannot. I was at Oxford this past weekend, and I asked myself, if $10 million was given to each of these students, and another 10 million was given to their Chinese counterparts, what would my people do with it? What would the other people do with it if we come back in 5 years to assess it? Probably, most of my people would have lost most of their money. Not true, the fact that they cannot, but because when they go back to their countries, the countries will not give them the space or the capacity to be able to invest these funds appropriately. Family ties will come in, family responsibilities, all manner of things that would pull you down. So it's time that we also started looking at these things and say, how do we put these things in place so that the next generation will not make our mistakes? I'm very disappointed that my generation has failed Africa, seriously.
And just as a closing statement, you bring it to a point that I wanted to reflect on when you speak about Oxford and you speak about the students, the curriculum that we have in our schools. If we were to change anything, to inculcate that, self-reflective thinking, but also commitment to seeing out the social compacts that we create, what would you say needs to change at schools at a foundational level?
I think, let me tell you a story. One Chinese senior official told me. He said when Deng Xiaoping came into office in 1978 and decided to change China, he took probably 30 bright or 40 bright kids. Most of them were from the ages of 18 to 21. Maybe the oldest would have been around 25. He took them to Paris, they went to Frankfurt, they went to Munich, they went to London, then they ended up back in Beijing. He put them in a room. He asked them everybody should write what they have seen. He said, Ambassador, I was one of the youngest guys, and I just cried. And I said, why? He said, because at that time in China, they had been made to believe that China was so developed and it was it was the center of the world. And he go to San Francisco, he saw the San Francisco Bay Bridge, he saw the Eiffel Tower, he saw the World Trade Center. That was before it came down. And he was like, oh my God, we've been living in a dream world. Then he said their leader told them that, look, the reason why I took you there was for you to learn, come back, and make sure that by the time you are my age, you would have gone past what you saw in all these countries. And when the man said that, really, I wept. He said, because the truth is that he's my age. He's 62. And within that time, I saw the best bridges in China. I saw the best technology in China. I mean, today, most countries are going to China to manufacture, and Vietnam is also picking up. So that's the sort of leadership we need. That would inspire us to make sure that whatever we go to these countries to learn, we come back and use it to improve our own, and make sure that we can use that to also build our technology. And that means changing part of our culture. I think our culture in most African countries, especially Black Africa, is also pulling us down. How do we change?
All right,
Ambassador. China at the point.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I really, really do appreciate the time that you have taken to speak to us about this very, very important matter. Ambassador Edward Boateng really issuing a challenge to all of us to raise the bar, demand more from leadership, and do better for the next generation. The future of Africa's cities and its people, he says, depends on what we choose to prioritize today: symbolism or service, politics or performance. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining Africa World Hour.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa One. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa One. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And it is 10 minutes to 10. Africa is home to some of the world's richest biodiversity, yet much of its natural wealth remains untapped. That's about to change, though. This September, the inaugural African Biotrade Festival will launch in partnership with the Organic and Natural Products Expo Africa, shining a global spotlight on indigenous innovation, sustainable trade, and green entrepreneurship. Joining us now to talk more about this is Warren Hickenbottom, Head of Sponsorships for the Expo. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Warren.
So thanks very much for having me on.
So why is this a game changer for Africa's natural products industry?
It's a trend that's been going on for probably a decade now, where we've seen more and more awareness amongst consumers around health and wellness and sustainability and environmental friendliness. And what's happened is that's translated into the supermarkets and mainstream. So what was a trend is now mainstream. We are far behind the rest of the world, but that presents a massive opportunity for us across the continent.
And obviously, just looking at the natural resources that we have, what gives us an edge because of the fact that we mentioned that some of these products are virtually untapped?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, South Africa, interestingly enough, is the third richest plant diverse country in the world. So we supply, ingredients and products into the cosmetics industries, novel foods, personal care, supplements, herbal teas, this pet care, the list goes on and on. So we really have a very rich resource, and it's important that resource is managed effectively so that all involved can take part in the value chain.
And you mentioned obviously various sectors, food, health, beauty, etc. And you say from Africa to the world. So are we introducing some new innovations to the world, or are we also improving on trends that are out there, but of which we have a better edge because of the kinds of products and the quality of products that we have?
I mean, it's a bit of both. We've got suppliers and manufacturers and producers doing some really amazing things with the typical types of ingredients and products that you can get kind of all over the world. But then the real uniqueness comes in the fact that we have a lot of indigenous products and herbs and plants here in South Africa that are not available anywhere else, and not just in South Africa, but across the continent. So the idea is to make heroes of those ingredients and products and gain exposure and drive education to foreign markets around what these products are, how they can be used, what the benefits are, and really to get the international market aware and buying from us as a continent.
So what are the trends currently in terms of key biotrait species? Obviously, if you're not in the world, you wouldn't know about it. So for the sake of our viewers, our listeners, just give us a sense.
So, I mean, just a few products and plants, so Scaletium being one, Buchu another, Baobab another, just to mention a few, and there are a lot more than that. The big thing is that these products have major medicinal and health benefits. What we've seen in our expo, this is the Organic and Natural Products Expo, which is us. This is our 5th expo, spanning 4 years, and we've seen what we thought was going to be a big food and beverage show when we first started has really transformed, where we see probably 60 to 70% of the show is non-foods. It's cosmetics, it's personal care, it's pet care. There's so much going into skin care in terms of moisturizers and the benefits of these products coming through in cosmetics that are just healthier for the skin, healthier for the body. It really is amazing to see.
And you also talk about the use of traditional knowledge, and obviously, if we look at the indigenous knowledge systems, they differ from region to region. Some of what might come out at the expo that the world will be surprised by and impressed by in South Africa or even on the continent. Are you able to just share a bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just a bit of a background. The Organic and Natural Product Expo is ours. We've been doing that for 4 years, as I said. In 2023, we actually introduced the first Biotrade Festival, where we were approached by a partnership between South African government and the European funding agencies like GIZ in Germany to put on this Biotrade Festival. So this is actually the second one that's taken place. But what that brings, biotrade is defined as the economic activities related to a country's indigenous plant resources. So there's two sides to that. First is it makes sure that there are economic activities, that these aren't just resources that are being wasted and not taken advantage of commercially, but more importantly, it makes sure that everyone from the Khoi and the San, for example, in South Africa, who have been custodians of some of these things for hundreds of years, all the way through to the pharmaceutical companies that are producing the end products, it makes sure that everyone in that value chain benefits from the economic activity that is a result. So it's managing the resource and ensuring that everyone benefits.
Let's talk about the businesses, but first the regulatory landscape. What is it, and how far is South Africa compared to what is happening, within the global sphere within industries there?
So there's two sides to that question. The first is our local organic sector organization, SAOSO, have been kind of leading the charge on driving a South African set of standards that growers and producers can get certified to. And that's important for local education and local consumption. There's no point getting certified for a European standard if you have no intention of being exported to that region or to go to the States or to Asia. And it's very expensive to do that. So the first side of the answer to your question is that so also be doing a lot of work to create our own standards so that if you want to be stamped and certified and recognized here in South Africa for South African consumption, it's not going to break the bank and you can do it and do it in the right way. So that's the first side. The other side is in the Biotrade Festival, the African Biotrade Festival, where the German funders, the Swiss funders have come on board and they're funding this initiative to try and help get participants with local indigenous South African and indeed African ingredients and products to get them certified for the international standards, which creates an export market, which is obviously crucial for the country. And as soon as we can get an inflow of foreign currency, dollars, euros, obviously that helps our GDP as well.
And I'd imagine that a lot of those would be smaller businesses.
You would not imagine how small. This has been a journey that we've taken over 5 years, as I've said, or 4 years, and actually longer when we first came up with the concept. This sector is dominated by small business, and I don't mean small business. I mean SMMEs. I don't know how the smallest acronym goes. They're really small, but the nice thing about it is that a lot of these products have been born out of a personal need. So, for example, your kid has some kind of an eczema and the traditional pharmaceutical products aren't working. These mothers and fathers go to the chemistry lab themselves and they develop their own products. So they come from amazing stories, but they are small businesses doing what I've been known to say weird and wonderful things. And for that reason, we rely heavily on government and corporate subsidies to get them involved in platforms like us so they can take advantage and share the playing field with the bigger companies with resource. It's actually a wonderful thing that we've seen kind of with our own eyes.
And just as you're speaking about that, I remember meeting a young lady at a manufacturing summit at which I was moderating, and she was just describing her journey in exactly the same way. Her son having developed this acne, rather skin condition that just would not go away. None of the products worked and she worked on it for, several years to finally get it right. So these wonderful businesses coming to your expo, I'd imagine the draw is also to get funders to help them through their journey going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. That's formed probably the biggest part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. Government, I must say, have been spectacular. All the provincial economic departments are very proactive in supporting the SMEs within their region. DTIC, SEFTA, the newly formed SEFTA, which was the old CEDA, have been amazing.